Brussels, August 28, 2025, and the heart of Europe was shaken this week, not by the sound of artillery on the Ukrainian battlefield, but by the chilling reality that the war has reached into the symbolic core of the European Union. In Brussels, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen delivered a grave warning. The Kremlin has once again made its intentions clear. Standing before cameras and reporters, von der Leyen did not temper her words. She framed Russia's latest attack on Kyiv as not only an assault on Ukraine, but also as a direct challenge to Europe itself. Her voice carried weight, the room hanging on every word, when she declared strong, unwavering support to Ukraine, our neighbour, friend, our future member. The remark underscored a truth that Brussels has repeated for months, but now carried even more resonance. Ukraine's place in Europe's future is non-negotiable. Hours earlier, reports from Kyiv confirmed the devastation. A wave of Russian airstrikes had struck the Ukrainian capital once more, this time leaving behind a particularly grim toll. 15 civilians were killed, including men, women, and children who had simply been going about their day. The strikes also inflicted severe damage on an unlikely target, the offices of the European Union mission in Kyiv. Images released by the European Broadcasting Service showed shattered windows, torn walls, and debris littered across what had once been the EU delegation's working space. Desks were overturned, documents scattered, and the signs of violence unmistakable. It was more than an attack on a city. It was an assault on a diplomatic presence, a blow aimed at the very institution that has become Ukraine's strongest ally. Von der Leyen, speaking over the projected images of the destroyed office, acknowledged the symbolic weight of the strike. It was an attack also on our delegation. I just spoke with our deputy ambassador. Her words revealed not just the physical reality of the destruction, but the human impact. The diplomats, the staff, the individuals who represent Europe's collective will, now forced to reckon with their vulnerability in a war zone. The Commission President did not mince her assessment of Russia's motives. She made it plain that the Kremlin's strategy was not confined to battlefield maneuvers or tactical objectives. Instead, she accused Moscow of pursuing a campaign of terror, one that disregards human life and international norms. It shows that the Kremlin will stop at nothing to terrorize Ukraine, blindly killing civilians, men, women, and children, and even targeting the European Union. This is why we are keeping maximum pressure on Russia. That means tightening our sanctions regime. It was a statement that combined outrage with determination. For months, Europe's strategy has centered on sanctions, military aid, and diplomatic isolation of Moscow. But this particular attack, one that directly touched the EU's own footprint in Kyiv, has injected new urgency into Brussels' message. Von der Leyen's insistence on maximum pressure suggests that further sanctions are being prepared, perhaps aimed at Russia's energy exports, its financial institutions, or even the individuals closest to President Vladimir Putin. Behind the political statements, the human suffering continues. Kyiv's emergency services worked through the night, pulling bodies from rubble, treating the wounded, and comforting those who had lost everything in the blasts. Families mourned in hospitals, while city officials once again condemned what they called indiscriminate targeting of civilians. For Ukrainians, the attack is a reminder of a cruel pattern. Russia's missile and drone strikes on urban centres have become a grim fixture of daily life. From Odessa to Kharkiv and now again in Kyiv, civilians are on the front lines of a war they never asked for. European leaders, already grappling with how to sustain support for Ukraine as the war drags into its third year, now face the additional burden of protecting their own missions abroad. The EU office in Kyiv was not a military facility nor a command centre. It was a diplomatic outpost, a bridge between Ukraine and Brussels. Its targeting highlights Moscow's readiness to disregard boundaries once thought sacrosanct. Von der Leyen's words carried a dual message. They were directed at Ukrainians as reassurance that Europe stands with them. But they were also aimed squarely at European citizens, a reminder that this war is not distant, not confined to the steppes of Ukraine, but bound up with Europe's own security and identity. In framing Ukraine as our neighbour, friend, our future member, the Commission President reinforced a narrative that has grown stronger since the first days of the invasion, that Ukraine's fight is Europe's fight. It is also a political signal, Enlargement of the European Union has often been a slow and cautious process, bogged down in bureaucracy and political disputes. Yet in the shadow of war, the question of Ukraine's membership has moved from hypothetical to inevitable. Von der Leyen's phrasing leaves little room for ambiguity. In her vision, Ukraine belongs inside the Union. Europe's response to the invasion has been defined by sanctions, thousands of measures targeting Russia's economy, from banking restrictions to technology bans. Each package has sought to limit Moscow's ability to fund its war machine while signalling Europe's resolve. Yet critics argue that sanctions alone have not been enough. Russia has adapted, forging new trade partnerships and finding ways to bypass restrictions. Still, von der Leyen's promise to tighten our sanctions regime suggests that the EU believes economic pressure remains its most powerful tool short of direct military involvement. Observers speculate that the next steps could include cutting off additional Russian banks from global financial systems, targeting loopholes that allow oil and gas exports to continue, and cracking down on companies accused of helping Moscow acquire restricted technologies. The setting of von der Leyen's remarks was not lost on those present. Standing in Brussels, the symbolic capital of Europe, she spoke with a backdrop of flags and the quiet determination of officials who know they are navigating one of the Union's most significant foreign policy crises in decades. This was not a routine press conference. It was a deliberate attempt to show that Europe would not be intimidated even when its own institutions are struck. The images of the damaged EU office in Kyiv, played during her speech, drove home the point. Europe itself is now in the crosshairs. The war in Ukraine has entered a phase of attrition. Russia continues its missile strikes while Ukrainian forces push back with Western weapons and their own resilience. For Europe, the challenge is sustaining unity amid the costs, economic, political and social, of supporting Kyiv. Public opinion across EU member states has at times wavered, with citizens facing rising energy bills, inflation and the fatigue of a long conflict. But leaders like von der Leyen are betting that moral clarity, coupled with reminders of what is at stake, will keep the Union aligned. The attack on the EU mission may serve as such a reminder. By striking a European office, Moscow risks hardening European resolve rather than weakening it. As von der Leyen concluded her remarks, the weight of her words hung heavy in Brussels. The Commission President, never known for dramatics, had delivered one of her starkest assessments yet of Russia's war. The message was clear. Europe is not merely an observer, but a stakeholder in the outcome of this conflict. Ukraine is not just a partner, but a future member of the European family. And Russia's attempt to terrorize civilians and intimidate Europe will not succeed. The images of destroyed offices in Kyiv, coupled with the president's emphatic words, will likely shape not only the EU's next steps, but also how history remembers this chapter. In the end, von der Leyen's warning serves as both a statement of solidarity and a call to action. The Kremlin may be willing to stop at nothing, but Europe, she insisted, will match that determination with unshakable resolve.